buy local. Did I say that right? And our presenters here this morning, Mr. Harvey Williams and Mr. Abraham Carpenter. I like starting on time so I can end on time. There also is as you leave, there's a little box there full of little samples of rice, probably about a serving of rice, and that way you'll have dinner this evening. All right? So with that, we're going to ask Mr. Williams to come up and start his presentation.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is good to be here.
Yes, it is.
I recognize that I am supposed to be one half of this presentation, and I hope that's the way it works out. But we'll do what we need to do to try to inform you of all the information that we have available, and I can give all of that. I was looking forward to doing this. Been looking forward to doing this presentation with Abraham because we go way back, and he's a very good friend of mine, and we have interchanged over years. However, we all know sometimes we can't do what we want to do all the time. My name is Harvey Williams, and I'm from East Arkansas, Rondo, and to be specific. I'm from Rondo, Arkansas. Some of you might have never heard that, but let me try to put it in some kind of location. I'm between Helena and Marietta.
Okay.
And I live in Rondo, as I said, but I have Alexa address. Well, I live in the rural. I'm out in the country. Well, like that. I'm out in the country. So, and I've been in that area all my life. My wife, who is with me today, she's actually born and raised in Rondo. I kind of migrated up about 2 miles from down south out of Phillips County to Lee County, and that's where we are now. My task today is to talk about this buy fresh, buy local, buy fresh, which is a very good topic to talk about. There's a lot of interest now and a lot of energy being spent in trying to connect farmers to markets, local markets. And there are many out there. I see on this program, I don't know who did this, they say vegetable entrepreneur, you can't do it. Well, I believe that. You can do many things that you really set your mind on doing and set your activities that you want to get on. I want to believe that it's no such thing as that I can't do it. You might not be able to do something the way somebody else is doing it. But if you really want to do something, you just have to figure out a way to do that. If you want to get something done, you figure out a way. I grow produce. And I guess I've been growing produce, well, commercially since in the mid-'80s, somewhere there about. And I started, actually I started in 1986. And I started with the efforts that had been put together by the Cooperative Extension Service in 3 states, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Mississippi. And they had organized, they helped organize those farmers in those areas to sell into that farmers market in Memphis at the Agri Center. And actually we got jumped into that, and that was my start. And I really didn't know very much about selling anything. I had marketing classes in salesman's classes while I was in school, but that was just, you know, that's a different than when you sit in the classroom and learn these skills, and when you actually get out there in the field and actually put them to practice, it's a major difference. And that's what I even tell people now, if they might come to me and say, and talk about growing produce and how you do that. Well, you can tell a person things that you know, but I also tell people all the time, until you put your hands in it, you really don't know. You really have to get to that point where you actually have that practical experience with that. I started, as I said earlier, with the farmer's market. That was my first time that I tried to sell anything. I sold through the farmer's market. A very good experience. One of the first things that I learned when I went to that farmer's market is that if you listen, the consumer will tell you exactly what they want. They don't have to just tell you that. They come to you and say, well, I want my tomatoes to be this size, and I want my tomatoes to be half, you know, all red. You just listen. They'll tell you. And you just have to pay attention to that. And that's one of the things, my family, that was one of the first things that we really learned about how to relate directly with the consumer. Listen. Now, I went from the farmer's market and we actually started moved that farmer's market closer to home back in Marietta after my two oldest sons graduated from high school. The first year we went, my oldest son was in high school. The next year, my second oldest son graduated from high school. So it left with one son there. That's a major task, driving 87 miles from home, 84 miles from home to that East Memphis market. So we had to do something a little bit different. So we actually started market there in Marietta. I did pretty well with that. And somewhere shortly after that, we had an opportunity to get introduced to a broker. And the first broker I ever dealt with was a broker from Kroger in Memphis. We sold him green beans. And that was a major experience for me because one of the things that I learned from that broker was that you have to be a person of your word. There was no contract, but that was your word. And it meant something. One of the things that he told me, he said, listen, I want you to understand that if I order this product from you, and I tell you what my quantity that I need, he said, if you don't have it, that's no problem. He said, that's fine. He said, but if you got it and you tell me you're going to deliver it at 5 a.m. on Thursday morning, don't wait until 5 a.m. the next morning and tell me I don't have it. He said, if you don't have it, just tell me. I can get it from somewhere. That's no problem. He said, if you do that, you're going to mess up my day. And he didn't tell me that easy. It wasn't that easy. That wasn't easy. But it meant something to me that you have to be consistent with dealing with brokers. And I've been dealing with brokers ever since. Now I totally deal with brokers. All of my sales are with brokers, not that particular broker, but another broker. And I like it's good for me. However, there are situations that the growers don't have the opportunity to grow the brokers, or can't meet the brokers' demand. That's okay too. There are also those markets that we've been talking about here, and everybody's talking about. One of them is the farmer school program. There are markets like, I'm gonna just kind of go through some of them that's available. Grocery stores. Farmer's market is the one that's easy. That's pretty easy to get to. You go to the farmer, anybody can go and rent a booth at the farmer's market. Getting into your grocery stores, that's another task. But the way I did is that I went to the broker, to the produce manager, and if they have the authority, like at the Walmart stores, the produce managers at the time, I'm not sure how that works now, at the time they had the authority, if they chose to, buy locally. There wasn't nothing that they had to do. Grocery stores, the other grocery stores, some of the grocery stores that I went to, they had to get that authority from the store manager first. So whatever the process is, that's what you follow. You know, if you got to go see the produce manager, you go to the produce manager and you say, well, I got to have that authority from the store manager. But then, let's go to the store manager together, if you will, making that contact. And then you have to sell. First of all, you sell yourself. You have to present yourself as that I can provide you with a quality product, and I can be consistent with delivering it when you need it. That's very important. That's very, very important. One of the other things that you have to be, one of the other factors that you have to consider is that if you're a small grower and you want to increase your acres and your volume, you have to put that product with a market. Don't get in too big of a hurry and say, let me try to put it like this. You sitting here today and you might get the idea that you want to grow pumpkins. You want to grow large volume of pumpkins. That's fine. But before you go out and plant a large acres of pumpkin, you make sure you put a market. You match that product with that market. It's easy to grow, it's not that easy to sell. And they are we all know that produce is a highly perishable crop. So you have to pair them together. Some products like, pumpkins, they store for a while. There are other products that store sweet potato was stored for a year. Apples, I understand, was stored longer than that. But they are stored in controlled temperatures. Other crops like greens, not so long. You got to ice them down, and they still don't have that very long of a shelf life. I deal mostly with squash. You got a 10-day shelf life if it's picked fresh and you don't allow the heat to build up in it, and you store it at a certain temperature. You got about a 10-day shelf life. Otherwise, you got to dump it. And I know many of you have heard this saying that if you don't sell it, you don't smell it. Very true. So you have to be very conscious of that all the time. One of the other factors is your location. If you want to get into, and this has to do more so with all markets, but especially wholesale markets. One of the things that has been beneficial to me in my area is my location to my market. There he is. Location is very important. Let me just point out one thing about location. Brokers want to be able to deliver a product from the farm, from wherever it's packed, wherever it's shipped from, to the location, the closest location. Now, let me show you why that's so important. It costs to ship. Trucking is very expensive. So they want to. Like I said, my position has been my position as well, because I'm within my major warehouse is 200 miles. Well, In my growing season, that's fine for me. So let me tell you what brokers look at. If I got to get this product, no, put it like this. If I can get this product 200 miles from my warehouse, then I'm gonna buy it if it meets the quality standards. Rather than shipping it out of, during my growing season, out of Illinois, out of Indiana, East Tennessee, those areas. Because they got to pass right by me to get to that same warehouse that I'm shipping 200 miles. So all these things we need to keep it bear in mind as we are making preparation for. That's why our location is so it's such a you got that whole logistic problem to deal with. One of the other factors is irrigation. If you're going to grow a crop, you got to have. I'd say you have to have irrigation. You just can't grow a quality crop without some type of irrigation. You know how you want to buy, you know how you want your produce to look like when you go to the store. Except the organic buyers, you want your tomato to look good. So when you ship it, or when you sell it to your buyers, it has to look good. Now, one of my things that we do, and I go in the grocery store, and I don't need nothing out of the produce section. But I find myself just walking through it anyway. It's just I just do that, and I look, and if I'm selling, like I said earlier, my biggest crop that I grow is squash. In the wintertime, I don't buy squash. I eat it out the freezer or whatever. But I go by the thing. I look at the squash that's on the market. Sometimes it look good, and sometimes it doesn't. Well, I know what I'm looking at. A very good experience I had one time when I was going back to the farmer's market. And Abraham probably remember and some of you might remember, but when the Mountain Pride tomato first hit the market, the way they sold that tomato, they say this tomato it has a 2-week shelf life at room temperature. Well, you think about that. A 2-week shelf life at room temperature. Well, the thing that I did, me and my family, we bought some seeds and we got some, we planted them, and when they got ripe, they would ripen. That Mountain Pride tomato would ripen. That whole tomato would ripen at the same time. You got a red tomato always. We grew some, and what we did, we set in the house there at room temperature. And before I tried to market that tomato in the Memphis market, I waited for 2 weeks to see if it was standing to what it was advertised for. At the end of 2 weeks, I could take a knife and slice it. I took it to the market, and I advertised it as this tomato had a 2-week shelf life. I put that's the way I advertised. Believe me, that they bought it. We had a big sale, and then it dropped off. It just dropped off. You know what? 2 weeks later, they came back and bought it again because they did the same thing I did. Because that's the way it was advertised. So if you have a product, you want to advertise that product as you know that product to be. If you know the product don't have a long shelf life, don't try to advertise that because you're gonna ruin your business. Because if a consumer decides that you is trying to get over them just to get rid of your product, then you're in trouble. You're in trouble. One of the big things that's going on now, and it's going to continue, is the food safety problem that we're dealing with. Food safety is a big issue now, and as it should be. No, I don't. Nobody, no grower. I don't see no grower want to just sell a bad product and make somebody sick. But we know there are things that happen So we have to take precautions. And one of the things that I see for small growers and now is being able to get GAP certified. And I know last year UAPB and the State Ag Department did a tremendous job in helping pay for those certifications, those audits that you have to have. And the other real problem I see is that for small farmers, it's expensive. So we have to figure out somehow. And I know somebody's working on. I know they're working on this. How do you integrate small farmers into this marketing to schools and universities and to the hospitals and all? How do you make that happen for them? It's a task. If you're gonna, Miss Rayford here, I'm sure she's gonna want to know what do you have that food safety. Have you had that food safety audit if she's going to buy your product for her school? Or perhaps at some point you'll have to have that. And that's going to be that's a big issue now. And I'm sure I know they're talking about it, and I'm sure that somewhere down the line it's going to get resolved. Insurance is another problem that we have to deal with. It's expensive also. But you have to have your product liability insurance. There's for commercial growers, little bit large scale commercial growers, broker growers. You have to have more than this product. You have to have a general liability policy also that covers everything. And if you want to sell to the market, you got to have it. It's just an expense that you hope you never have to cash in on. You don't ever want that to happen to you. But you have to have that assurance that you feel pretty good. You can go to bed at night and lay down and say, well, if something does happen, at least, I may have to go out of business, but at least I won't go under. You have to have that kind of assurance. And not only that, buyers do require that you have it for them. And I'm glad Abraham walked in. Let me tell you, I'm gonna tell you about a situation I had when I first started trying to grow commercially. I was growing. I started growing when I first went to the farmer's market. I was growing 16 different crops. And that was a mix, because when you sit up at the farmer's market, when the consumer come by, you want to have everything they want. That was a lot, but now I scale that down to three, four major crops, and I grow squash, major crops, bell peppers, cucumbers, and a few eggplants. I'm really still trying to learn how to grow the bell peppers and eggplant. I mean, bell peppers and cucumbers, because that's a pretty good task. But at this point, I want to grow greens. I had an opportunity, I thought, to grow some greens commercially. So the first thing I did is that I sat down and I did all as much research as I could about growing greens. And you got to learn what to do now when you're growing these things commercially. So I went to Abraham. I don't know if you remember this or not, but I went to Abraham and I told Abraham what I wanted to do, and he sat there and told me what things that I need to do. And the last thing Abraham told me, he said, Harvey, he said, let me tell you something. He said, if you're going to grow greens commercially, it ain't no such thing as inclement weather. Now, that I remember that very clearly. And the very first order of greens I had to cut, I cut them in the rain. I did. I cut them in. Not only that time, I cut that the very first order. But you suit up. You suit up, you tell your crew what we got to do. You tell your crew, if it rains, we got to suit up. But we got to cut all the greens. I tell my crew now, if Monday we're gonna pick squash on Monday, If it starts raining, we're gonna suit up. If it's starting to light, we're going to the house. Yeah, that's the way it is. We're going to the house. But after stop, we're going back to the field. Because you got a product there that you got to get to the market. And if you let it stay on the vine a day longer, then you got number 2 stuff. And I guess these number 2 buyers right here want to hear that. But you got number 2 stuff. And you don't want to have no lot of number 2 stuff. Those are the kind of things that you have to remember, you have to be cognizant of all the time. And visit farms when you can. Ask questions. You know, I guess I've been wanting to travel all the time, but I traveled from California to Florida and some of all of the, the major vegetable growing states, and I learn a lot every time I go. And the last trip I made, I specifically asked for that trip because it was something that I wanted to learn from what I'm doing, because I thought it might help me improve my operation. And that was we field pack. We don't pack anything in our products in our shed anymore. We field pack everything that we grow. That's a big access to me. That's a big, it saves me money, it saves me time, it cut out on my labor, the time that they have and all. My time is up.
Finish your thought.
That's what we have to. Those are the things that I want to, and not only that, we have to be open to anybody that asks for your advice or your help, because somebody along the line helped us. Thank you much.
In order to keep from putting all of your eggs in one basket, do you have more than one buyer during your regular season, or you totally depend on one buyer?
I got one major buyer. That's the smaller buyers that buy wholesale. The one major buyer that buy most of my wholesale, most of my crop.
And if he doesn't buy, you have enough smaller buyers to make up the difference?
No. That's one of the other options one of the other risks that you have. So you have to you can't never have too many buyers, but you can take on too many buyers. If you got more product, don't have enough product to take on another major market, don't take it on, because you can miss both of them.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, for that very informative presentation. And we got another heavy hitter here that's going to follow him up with even more information. Most of you, if you don't know him, you've heard of him. And I've been dealing with Mr. Carpenter personally for 15, 17 years or more through our agency, working in partnership with him. He's got a lot of good information, so if you please give your attention to the same attention you gave Mr. Harvey, give it to Mr. Abraham Carpenter of Carpenter Produce.
I want to thank Harvey for his great presentation. Harvey's always good. He's always thorough. He brought his slides and everything. That's the way Harvey do it. So we appreciate you being here today, Harvey. Good to see all of you. As Mr. Wood stated, I'm Abraham Carpenter Jr. My family and I, we grow about 1,200 acres of produce down in Grady, Arkansas. Been around for almost 50 years now. That's a long time. Seen a lot of things and a lot of people come and go. We started off at the grassroots level at the farmers market. Well, we really started on the side of the road. My mother, she got upset because they were beating out produce at the little old stores, and she was so happy when Mr. Thomas Vaughn and I think it was Charlie Reed at that time, they started the farmers market. There was a whole lot of people involved, and we were so thankful for that, because that gave us our initial start. We started off with about 5 acres and grew on up to 1,200 acres. Over the years, I've seen a lot of things happen that changed to make us expand, to make us want to kind of fine-tune things a little bit. When I first got out of high school, I guess we were probably at about 80 acres of vegetable. And I had to make a decision whether I was going to go into the vegetable production full-time or go to college at that time. I made the decision to go into the vegetable production full time. All my brothers and sisters, it's 8 brothers and it's 5 brothers and 3 sisters, 35 family members involved in all in the operation. And I tell you, I couldn't do it without them. You know, my brother Albert, he's here, that's my right-hand man. He helps run the farm really good. But in addition to the family, we hire probably about 50 or 60 other people to help us during the peak of season. We get probably 12, 15 migrant workers in every year. The same ones usually come. They love to come. We treat them just like family and pay them well. The rules and regulations are pretty much set. We get the H-2A workers in each year. So the rules are pretty much set. You have to pay them almost $10 an hour. Furnish them housing, transportation, utilities, and they eat all they want to eat out the field, so they really getting it pretty good. Sometimes I think they're doing better than I am. But nevertheless, we have to have them. You have to have a consistent labor supply if you are going to go out and produce vegetables. Anyone that's trying to get into the vegetable production, the first thing you're going to have is a good sound business plan. You're going to have a good sound business plan, and we got plenty of good people to help us with that. At the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, I don't know exactly who's in control of that particular area right now. They're probably sitting in this room, though. But they can help you put a good business plan together. I think UALR have a good set of people over there that they can help put a good business plan together. But you got to do that in order to go to your finance people to make sure that you have everything presentable to them to get your finances in order. You got to have your finances lined out. Vegetable production, and Harvey can attest to this, it's astronomical. If you're going to grow produce now and grow it right, it costs a lot of money. You know, when we first started off, you know, planting a turnip green seed, you probably could get it for $1 a pound back then. Turnip green seeds cost $60 to $70 a pound now, you know, if you're going to go with the hybrid seed. And that's what we go with. Watermelons, you could get a watermelon, you probably get one now for $5 or $10 a pound. But if you're going to grow the best and grow it commercially, you're going to pay $400 or $500 a pound for watermelon seed. It just costs so much. But in return, you get a good quality product, you get a consistency, and that's what you got to have if you're going to offer to the commercial markets. But I tell you, it really costs. Irrigation. If it wasn't for NRCS and their assistance, I don't know whether I would have been able to afford all the irrigation I needed for all of my land or not, because when I tell you it's gone through the roof, everything is pretty much triple. Some things have even quadrupled in price. Fertilizer. When we first started off, you probably get a ton of fertilizer for $100 a ton. Now it's almost $800 a ton. So it's really gone through the roof, but the only way, if you just sit there and think about it, the only way you can make it balance out is you got to grow a crop that you can market very well, that you can get a pretty decent price for it, and you got to get the yields up on that crop. If the yields are not up on that crop, and you got all those production costs in it, it's going to be a sad day. Yeah, it really is. But we've been fortunate enough to try to get things organized, and that's one thing that you cannot control, the weather. You know, if you could pick your days, pick your climate, pick your weather, everything would work out perfectly fine, but that's just not the case. So in order to sustain yourself, you just have to prepare for the unexpected. You know, I work really close with Mr. Rod Woods. They got a little program in place called the NAP. It's an insurance program. It doesn't actually cover all of the costs, but it helps. You know, and if one is going to be involved in the vegetable production, you have to be able to take full advantage of all the opportunities and all the resources that are out there, like UAPB, Arkansas Land and Farm Development, NRCS, Farm Service Agency. You have to get with these people because they have all the knowledge and the expertise and the resources that you need in order to make you and continue to be successful. The programs that they have been a big help. That's part of the reason that we've been able to sustain ourselves over the years. NRCS, they've had a very good program. I don't know if it's still around, but where they go out and help small and minority farmers put in the irrigation, and you pay a minimal cost. That's been very good. And I'm very thankful for not just for myself, but for everybody else out there, because those programs are really needed. They really need to enhance them. They need to start putting more money into those particular programs in order that the farmers could receive the adequate help that they need. But nevertheless, I'm thankful for whatever I do have. Your labor, I've talked about it a little bit, you know, it's very important because growing vegetables, you have everything that's just pretty much hands-on. You got the sweet potato operation that you can buy a machine and it'll plant them and dig them, but you still have to have 15, 16 people on the machine that operate it. So it costs a great deal of amount of labor to grow vegetable crops, and if you don't have your labor source identified, you're going to be in trouble because you have to go out there and harvest it. Most crops are harvested by hand. We ventured out into watermelons, you know, and grow watermelons on a pretty large scale basis now, and it takes a lot of labor for that. I was telling my brother Albert the other day, they make a conveyor belt that you can take to the field and put the watermelons on there, and it convey them up to the truck and all. He told me, he said, man, by the time you go and put them watermelons on the conveyor and wait on them to get to the truck, he said, we can line 15 to 20 men out there and we'll be done did it better than the machine can do it. And that's the truth, you know, but you got to have that labor source in place and identify, because it's high labor intensive. Growing vegetables is high labor intensive. And when you put especially when you put all that money into the production cost, you got to get it back. You have to get it back. And Harvey, he knows himself, when you go out here and deal with the brokers, the wholesale distribution centers, they want it as cheap as they can get it, quite naturally, and I don't blame them, I understand it, but there is a breaking point, you know, that you can sell your product. There's a certain area, a certain price range that you have to get in order to be successful. You can go out, sometimes you have an oversupply, and you might can sell that product at a very minimal price, maybe lower than the cost that you have in it for your production cost, but at some point, you have to get the money that you put into that crop if you're going to stay in business. Kind of like a fella that they told me about, had a truck going to Chicago. He was hauling watermelons to Chicago, and he was losing 50 cents a watermelon. And he thought the solution to his problem was to just go and get a bigger truck and keep selling it for the same price he was selling it. That's not it. At some point, you got to get a premium price for your product, you know, and the farmers markets, that's the reason we've always kind of remained loyal to the farmers market, because you can get the premium prices at the farmers market. Sometimes you can find some wholesale distributors and distribution centers who appreciate buying local, who appreciate buying quality. And when you can find those type of buyers, sometimes they don't mind paying a little bit extra to get the quality and to get the local. Everybody's concerned about eating fresh, eating local now. And I don't blame them, because when a product comes out of Mexico, you don't know what you're getting. You don't know what you're getting. They use chemicals over there. I think they still use DDT over there. You know, and I know I don't want that in my system. I don't want it in my body. But buying local, you know, we have to go by certain standards. We have to make sure we plant the right crops, use minimal amount of fertilizer, can't put all the chemicals. We try very hard to use as few chemicals as we possibly can. because we eat the products that we grow every day. And I like them too. You probably can tell by that. But everybody's concerned. The farmers markets, I have seen a really good growth in farmers market. It grows every year, and I can see that because everybody wants to buy good, fresh, homegrown, local produce. And this is the best for you. You know what you're getting. You know, so many of our customers, they'll come by and they like to ride by the fields and look at the product. They like to come out and buy from the home or buy at the local markets. And that's the way to go. Anybody who's trying to start out on a grassroots level, my advice is the first market you want to tap into is the farmers market, because that's where you're going to get your highest net return, and that's where you're going to be able to get your premium price. Next thing that we want to cover is your markets. Now, if you go into the vegetable production, you got to have that market identified. We've sold quite a bit to Walmart, Kroger, a few other guys. Walmart could probably buy everything that we grow. I'm sure they could, you know. I don't try to sell Walmart everything, because my father taught me a long time ago, you don't put all your eggs into one basket. And, you know, if you are growing strictly for Walmart or any other distribution center, you know, if things don't pan out exactly like you want to, or if you're totally dependent on that one market, you're in trouble. So that's the reason it's kind of good to diversify. When you're going out to do your markets, you may want to have your farmers market lined up. You may want to have 2 or 3 other distribution centers lined up, and try to get some kind of commitment from them on the front end. Because the worst thing that you can do is go out and grow a whole lot of produce, and then when they get ready, you start calling folks in saying that you got produce ready and it's time to sell it. Well, I tell you, I feel sorry for you if you do it like that, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to lose the majority of that crop if that market is not already identified. I started off, we did a lot of trial and error throughout this 50 years of being in operation, a whole lot of trial and error, and I'm glad that I've been able to see the error of my ways. I won't say that we've totally perfected it, but I know what works and what don't work now, you know, and that's very important. And anybody that's going to be into the vegetable production, you're going to have to make sure you learn how to survive and how to identify the resources and the markets that you need. And I'm not going to talk too long, because I know a lot of people probably got a lot of questions that they want to ask. But I just want to make sure that I thank everyone for attending the session. I appreciate you all inviting me, and I know my brother Harvey did a marvelous job, and at this particular time we'll entertain any questions that you all might have. I do. I particularly, myself in particular, I like the farm to school idea. I do. I've been working with Mr. Charlie Williams, you know, and I'm glad that he's here. Charlie works hard. Let's give Charlie a round of applause. I think he gets everybody attention when he say that strike force, you know. But he works really hard to try to promote that particular program. I think his sister is involved with it also. But I think it's a really good deal. I have not been involved totally, but that's something that I've said this year I'm going to definitely get involved with in a more major way, because I think you probably can get a premium price for your product. It's a good market outlet. It's a good source of marketing your products. And I look to be working very close with Mr. Williams on that, because I think it's a good deal. I really do. You know, if you can grow good quality products, I think it's going to be a really good deal. And I look forward to working with him and developing that market this year. Yes, sir.
Mr. Carter,
city of Durham is trying to promote the vegetables, and you were saying about the market and the brokers. I guess we get all that information from the Universal Office on the Pine Bluff or something, basically you will be in.
Yes, sir.
I was talking with your brother this morning, said that y'all already got greens in the ground and everything.
Yes.
And refreshments down there in Durham and everything. We got our soil samples and everything.
Mm-hmm.
We're a little wet still.
Yes.
You understand?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, pretty wet.
Yes.
And if we put greens in the ground right now, it's not going to be feasible.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a good idea, or wait till the ground and get a little bit more close?
Well, you have to have your land pretty dry, you know. That's really, it's important to, if you're gonna grow vegetables, the type of soil that you grow it in, you know. If you're gonna plant something like greens, squash, or something like that, you can't plant those in the real heavy soils because it just absorbs too much moisture. If you get a big rain, you know your crop is pretty much gone. You go out and plant it on sandy soils. You got to have good irrigation in place now, because even though you can't plant a seed in a whole lot of moisture, in a lot of ground that holds a whole lot of moisture, it needs a whole lot of moisture to survive. It does. So if you're going to plant vegetables, try to get you some good sandy loam, some semi-mixed soil, you know, because that's the kind that you're really going to need for vegetables. Because if you don't, you'll end up in the situation that you are now. Your planting season will be delayed. And when your planting season is delayed, that means that the price that you get for your product will go down. Because when everybody gets it, the demand goes down, the demand is low, and normally when the demand is low, that means the price is low. Yes, sir. How you doing, Mr. Trice? Dr. Trice?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
How have you incorporated, I know everybody knows irrigation is important, how have you incorporated government programs to help you get your irrigation systems?
They've been very important. They've been life-saving. Think an agency that you may be familiar with, NRCS. They've been very instrumental in helping my family and so many others that I know to get the proper irrigation and the proper conservation practices in place that you really need to survive. And I'll be honest, anyone who cannot take full advantage of those resources that are out there, utilize them to the fullest, develop a good relationship with people like Dr. English and yourself from NRCS, Farm Service Agency. It takes a collaboration with everybody working together to make things work and to make you continue to be successful. I cannot stand before you today and tell you that I would be totally successful if I just would have tried to do everything by myself. It was not for the help of people like Mr. Woods, Dr. English, Dr. Trice, and so many others, and just individual farmers talking and communicating together. Harvey have even taught me a few things. Even though I started probably the produce production before him, he taught me some things. So you have to be open and willing to learn and willing to utilize those programs from the government agencies, because that's going to be the key to you developing or getting better, expanding your operation, or that's going to be the key to you even staying in business. But we do have good key people in place from UAPB, Arkansas Land and Farm, NRCS, Farm Service Agency. We've got good people in place. It used to be that you had people in place in those particular agencies that did not help you, that did not want to help certain individuals. It used to be that way. But normally now, that's not the case. You got good people in place that's willing to help, who will extend the hand that you need in order to make your farm successful. And that's what you got to have. You got to utilize all those resources. Yes, sir.
Obviously, there's a lot of talk about the farm to school program, and you're going to have crops that are going to come available when school's in session, but you also have crops that are going to come available when school's not in session. Do you know if there's a plan for like storing, freezing, whatever product that
Yeah.
they come in like corn and things like that that are not gonna be
Yeah.
in schools and session?
Well, basically, what my idea is and what my plan is to grow the crops that I can market to the farm to school at the time that they need it, at the time that they're in session or when they need it. And if I'm going to grow other crops that will be coming in after their buying period ends, I will have another market developed for those crops. But I won't try to get into the freezing and storing and all that. No, sometimes that don't work out too well. Yes, ma'am.
Have you, some school districts have, just as the speaker was talking this morning, the summer feeding programs where they need produce for the corn and everything. That's still,
Still part of
in
it.
some communities, it's either part of the school or there's another organization that's still buying food in volume to feed 100, 200, 300 children.
Okay. Mr. Charlie?
Have you incorporated the high tolerance in your production, which will help extend the growing season, may access to the farm school market?
Oh, certainly, certainly. You have to do that. You have to buy the high tolerance seeds that will extend your growing season.
High tone houses.
The what now?
Have you incorporated high hoop houses?
Hoop houses.
Yeah.
Hoop house? No, I have not.
Have not done that.
I have not done that.
We need to
Now,
talk.
we need to talk about it. I tell you, I learn something from these guys all the time, you know, and I really appreciate that because Charlie and so many others have taught me so many new things here lately.
I had a question for Mr. Williams.
Okay.
I know that Forest City School District is heavy on that food to school farm to school program. And I didn't know if you were participating in that or that's kind of close to your area.
Well, you know,
It's still
I've
a pretty
had
good
some
wage.
conversation with the people that Charlie and them, and I have some conversation with them about it.
Okay.
I think one of the things that I just wanted to point out about of the farmers, if you're growing, if you're a farmer and you got you have your set market window, you know when your product is going to come off, and you know when they're going in. I think one of the one of the tools that we could use as farmers is to, when we are talking with somebody like the farm to school, you know, just kind of lay that out. You know, my market window starts here and it's going to end here. I'll have this product starting this date, and this product starting this date, and so that can kind of incorporate that into their at least they know when it's available to them from the one particular farmer. I think that's been very helpful in allowing those buyers to understand where they can get that product at a certain time.
Got time for a couple more questions, and then we do some little administrative activities here before the 11:30 session starts. So we got just a few more questions. I think he had his hand up.
What I was asking about, you all from the old school, you dealt with the government
Yes, sir.
back during the times that they were more concerned about taking your farm away from you rather than helping.
That's true.
How much commitment do you have to make to these new programs nowadays? As far as back then, I had to tell them every chicken, every hog, all the property I own, all the equipment I had, and everything, just to buy a tractor. They wanted to sell me the whole farm rather than the tractor. So, what has been your experience with government programs, modern day government programs?
Well, I think you're referring to probably when you go to them for financing,
Yes.
for operating capital. That probably haven't changed a whole lot.
I was gonna let you say.
When you go to them to get an operating loan,
Well, the intention was to buy a tractor. I already had the farm.
Yeah.
But they wanted to sell me the fence posts and pond and everything else. I didn't need all that. All I needed was a tractor.
well, if you probably need to just talk to the right person, and I'm sure there's somebody here from Farm Service Agency who can probably expound on that a little bit, Dr. England.
There will be a workshop, I think, in next session, but they will be talking about the loan program.
Yeah.
Now, they do have another program that they just started, it's the microloan. They don't take everything.
Good.
A lot of times you buy the tractor, maybe that tractor, let the tractor give them. So it
has changed somewhat, but in the next hour, there will be a workshop on that.
Good. Well, Dr. English is a wealth of knowledge.
He had his hand up.
Yes, sir.
You were talking about diversity in your buyers, but also I'm concerned about diversity in crops. So I don't want to have just one crop in case something happens to that. But how do you pick the crops you want so you don't have too many or have the crop that's not right? I mean, I know obviously we need to do some research and market research and where you can sell to, but
Well,
we have a concern with my wife and I about having too many things going on at once.
yeah, I'll respond a little bit, and then I'll let Harvey respond. But we normally choose the crops that we have a market for. You don't want to plant all of one particular crop. When you go into the market, the farmer's market, you want to plant a small amount of each variety because people at the market, they want a variety. They want basically everything that they can go to the grocery store and get. So you have to plant a good variety if you go into the farmer's market. But growing commercially, you probably want to plant different particular crops that particular buyer wants, where you can load a truck together.
Right. Okay.
You can put a load together, and because it's very important, you're going to make more net return when you can take a whole truckload of product instead of a half a truckload.
So
Yeah.
it depends on the business.
Diesel fuel is too high.
Yeah, that's very important for somebody trying to run a truck. One of the things that I did when I increased my volume to include more volume, more acres, being able to plant more acres, is that, actually talk to my buyer. That conversation, we have that conversation once a year, in January every year. Then if I want to expand those acres, then I ask that question. Can I expand this crop this year? And if they tell you, yeah, that's your goal, what you want to do, then you can go up to that way. You can feel sure because you have an agreement.
Mm-hmm.
January every year, each year is when we have that conversation. We come out with that agreement. Well, then you can go up to those acres. Now, if you want to add another crop, then you have that same conversation. And I like to add, we do cucumbers now, we do bell peppers. Well, I had to have that conversation. One of the things that I learned when I started talking about cucumbers is that you can't grow cucumbers on the ground anymore for us. They have to be grown on trellises because you don't want the white belly on them. Well, that in itself is another deal that you have to deal with. But if you want to do it, then you research that information. And if you want to grow it, then you grow it. I'm still learning how to grow those two crops. So I'm just, you take a little bit at a time. I don't go out and say I'm going to supply you with 500 million pounds of that this year because I can't. I don't have no idea that what I can do that.
Too much risk.
Yeah. So I go with, I want to increase the acres. When I feel comfortable that I can produce this crop, the quality, bring the quality up. I don't have any problem with dealing with quantity. The quality is what we have to deal with.
I got one more question right here.
Had one gentleman was talking about soil. In every county in Arkansas, there are soil surveys that tell you everything that you need to know about soil itself. And there's also, you can go online, Web Soil Survey, to give you all information about the soil, different soil types that's on your land. Whether it's sand, clay, silt, whether it's flood, all that's out there. So we got that information in every county.
Yeah, we cool on that.
Soil survey, public soil survey at the NRCS.
Yeah, we cool on it.
Okay. Yeah.
Drive well.
Okay. With that, we want to thank both of these excellent presenters here. That's a lot of information. And if you didn't get nothing out of that, I don't know, maybe you might need to change. You might be in the wrong line of business, but you at least got a strong foundation. Take that, and hopefully you can build your business off that, and maybe someday y'all be up here presenting to the next group of young farmers. Let's give these guys a round of applause.